Have you ever changed as a person? Become a parent or lost somebody that you loved? Now, death and birth or rebirth are interchangeably connected. Through every moment of every death, there is a new beginning of a kind. It doesn't matter what form that death or rebirth is, the two coexist. So there can never be an ending without a beginning. Now bear with me because I do have my notes down at my side. Alright? What I wanted to talk about is the threshold. And it is a liminal place, a liminal stage that we go through with death and rebirth. And every single death that we go through has a passage or a rite of passage. During the rite of passage, we go through a separation. So it doesn't matter what we're doing. Whenever there is a rebirth, we will go through the same series of events. The liminal stage is where we find a threshold. And when we're meeting with a threshold of a physical death or a emotional death, maybe we're going to become a different person, we're going to become a parent, for example. And in those liminal stages, which is the middle, we find the threshold which is asking us to reflect on what has gone before and where we're about to lead our lives into the next chapter. So there are three parts of a rite of passage. Now you have the initiation, which is the transition or the transformation that is occurring. So that rite of passage may be indicated by a person coming of age or menopause, stepping into a new job, whatever that initiation part is. Now that begins the rite of passage. The second part is the separation and the liminal stage. So we're then separated from society, or we're separated from our past self or our past job. In the middle we meet the threshold, and in the liminal stage we meet with struggle and challenge, and even in the process of death and dying physically, we can often find that these are the same places once again. We are separated from our families, from our loved ones, and we go into a liminal stage where we're struggling, we're removing the barriers and the boundaries and the limitations that have held us to the vessel. And as we find our new self inside this liminal stage, through that struggle of separation, we then reconnect on the other side and we reintegrate into the world. So say, for example, that you have just left a relationship and your separation has occurred. Your initiation began. I want something new, something different. This is no longer serving me. We're in the liminal stage where we're at that threshold, and that threshold is, right, we can continue moving on, we can go into a new stage of life, and we're not quite sure and certain about what's on the outside. And often we reintegrate into our social circles. You know, people will leave a situation and then they come back to their social friends and their network and their peers. Or they will completely move country, or some sort of way that they reintegrate back into the world in a different way. So in every single life situation that we have a death, a rebirth is occurring through the same pattern of events, where we have that initiation, a separation, liminal stage of the fight, the struggle, the release, and the finding of the strength, where we draw upon ourselves that final strength to let go and to remove ourselves from that old version of self and move into the new, whatever that may be. And what I really want to highlight here is how throughout our experiences in life, if you really look closely at death and rebirth of any form and any kind, when we communicate ourselves and we express to another person that we're struggling, that we're going through a certain liminal stage where we're, about to become that new person, and we're in that threshold. And it's that fight that happens inside. Now, the language or the use of language that we use during those times can be directly associated with the same birth of our physical incarnation. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is, when we're born, think about the process of how incarnation happens, how a physical reincarnation into this life occurs. Right now, we're brought into the womb and into the waters of the dark, watery space of the mother inside. And for approximately 9 months, for the majority of us, we're inside this beautiful, safe cocoon. And at some point, there is a descent, right? For the most part. Obviously some of us are brought out into the world in a different way. But for the most part, we are all transitioning through this descent of a very dark, a very constricting tunnel. Now, the language that is associated in this situation with the reincarnation and with birth and the process of birth is really beautiful, because we use the same language as though we were moving down through the channel and the tunnel, going from the womb and those watery, beautiful spaces down out into the cold, hard light of the earth, right? But how do we get through that? We get through that through immense pressure, and we get through that with constriction and tension, and all the way down, it is through this constriction and this firm pressure being placed upon us over and over at different rhythmical patterns until we reach the light and we get through. So if I come back and I swing back around again to the association of our words that we use, how do you tend to express yourself when you're struggling in life, when you're moving from one place to another, when you're rebirthing yourself? The words that we tend to use are things like, I can't see my way out, or I feel like the walls are caving in on me, I can't see, this place is dark, I don't know where I'm going, right? And you think about that process of birth and how the language that we use when we're struggling and constricted and we feel like life is just putting all of this pressure on us in a liminal stage. And so that's the threshold that we meet in every death, regardless of what kind, whether it is our transition from here into the next world, or an emotional change and transition from this world to the next. And for those who have explored and healed the process of addiction, well, there's an initiation that occurs. That initiation is life, and that initiation is something new and different, a different storyline to be told. And that desire is what brings us through. Just as desire is most typically the same initiation point of a physical birth. And so that light has sparked for the addict or the person who wants to heal their trauma, and then they will go through that threshold in this place of not knowing where is up and down or out. And as we transition through this threshold, we begin to meet the light on the other side, and out we come. And on the other side, as we reintegrate and we integrate into the world, an addict may find themselves re-entering into a totally new situation where these people have never been met before. And at first, in every birth, every death and every rebirth, at first it will be strange, right? Think of that newborn child who has just been born into the earth. What a strange new light it is here. So when it comes to death, and a death of a kind, we're always transitioning and cycling around through these beautiful stages, but it is during our liminal stage where we are in the threshold of becoming somebody new, and those walls are constricting and our fears are coming up and we're not sure how long it's going to take until we get through. That is where we find the most strength. That is where we find the most character building through life. And so when you go to apply yourself to any new change, any different storyline that you're about to unfold and you don't know what's on that other side, just think of it like it is a birth of a newborn child. You have no idea what this earth or this new place is going to look like, but in time you will get to know it. And in time, you'll feel that light and that love. And so if I take us back to a physical death, and we're reminded of the process of death and rebirth, when the spirit leaves the vessel and exits from this plane, the doors open, and after the struggle has completely ceased and our light returns, it's the same as a newborn child on the earth. We re-enter into light. From the dark watery wombs we move into the space of brightness, right? And it's the same when we die. So in every death, a rebirth is occurring at every moment of every breath that we take. We're taking in an initiation of life force. And at some point it constricts inside our blood vessels and inside our lungs and is taken up, it's taken in. And as we exhale, we let go of what no longer serves. So try to apply this to any new change that feels uncomfortable. To remember that those walls that are caving and closing in the darkness, remember that if you look, you'll always see the light. You just have to look a little bit harder sometimes and take another breath to allow the motions of life to cease during your threshold, because that's what it will do during the threshold. It's going to move, it's going to contract and expand, and it'll cease. And if we look at yin and yang in the death and rebirth process, or the threshold process as well, and in breathing, we have the light or the yin, which is that place of surrender, and to take a pause. And then we have the drive and the force, and that part of the yang energy that's involved in the female body during her contracting. Everything in life has a balance of light and dark, and death and rebirth, in everything that we do. So I hope you find some form of an insight in this story. This is going to be the first of about 10, all to do with death and rebirth, and different perspectives and light to be brought upon the process of death and rebirth. Because we often think life and death and rebirth is just about incarnation. But I truly believe that every moment of our lives has this co-creative, beautiful, rhythmic energy of the life and death process. So if you have anything to share with us about the story that I have just shared, or the perspectives that I've shared, please feel free to ask or write a comment to add more to this vision, to add more to the different perspectives on the death and rebirth experience. Okay, see you later.